if I may, I want to read this. You collect documents and physical materials from public and private sources related to the UAP, which is the official term for UFOs, to study it and then transition the transformative technologies behind it to wider applications of public benefit. That's amazing, just that. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. So, Commander Dave Fravor of the Black Aces, who observed one of these objects, said, "Boy, I'd like to fly that thing." And we'd like to think that's possible with sufficient research and focus in the public and private sectors. These aircraft are demonstrating unprecedented capabilities that are beyond even what our science is able to understand. So they also, though, are demonstrating it's possible. So we're pressing ahead as arduously as we can to get more information and try to better understand how this is happening in an effort to duplicate these capabilities.
So I want to make really clear and be very careful that I don't create this atmosphere or the impression that I am a Area 51 believer and that we've got aliens in jars and everything else. Maybe we do. I don't know, but I don't think so. But I do want to ask, when you say you want physical materials from public and private sources, do you believe that we do have physical materials from some of these things that we have been studying that maybe we're holding back?
We're not taking that position publicly, but there are materials that have been provided to us, and the individuals providing them in various cases have established plausible linkage to explosions that have occurred, for example, and materials that have been recovered. Other researchers have been doing this for years, Jacques Vallée, for example, and some of these materials have genuinely extraordinary properties. So we're studying those.
Can you give me an example of what that means?
Sure. So there is in any metal, for example, naturally occurring element, a subset of the atoms that have an extra neutron, that have that are an isotope. So on our planet, there's a signature. Iron will always have, say, 4% of the atoms in a total sample that have an extra neutron, say. So some of these materials have different ratios than anything normally found on Earth. So it raises the question whether or not somebody was manipulating those in a lab somewhere on Earth at great expense, or whether these materials actually came from outside the solar system, formed in a different stellar explosion in different solar system. The ability to manipulate materials at that level is, one, extraordinary, and two, enables different engineering processes. It can support different engineering processes and different science. So it's the kind of thing that we're seeking to establish in our work and our research.
Because I know that we have talked about hyper speeds. I can't remember what it's called, but speeds that are just not. There's no alloy
hypersonic
on Earth that. Yeah, hypersonic. There's just no alloy that will hold up to that, and that's what we're seeing on some of these videos, right?
That is correct. The analysis of these vehicles and also eyewitness testimony from Navy pilots show velocities that no aircraft we know of could withstand and no pilot could withstand.
How fast are they going, do we think?
In some cases, it's not even the top speed that's so stunning as much as the acceleration itself, from 0 to thousands of miles per hour in a couple of seconds. So if for the case of the Tic Tac, the top velocity may have been 5,000 or 7,000 miles per hour, but it achieved that velocity in practically the blink of an eye.
The G-force alone would kill anybody
Absolutely.
inside, at least as we understand it. All right,
Absolutely.
yeah, Luis, let me go to you. You were part of the government. You oversaw some of this research, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. And we've been funding this research, even though the government has been denying it forever. We have been funding it forever. And now that, for the very first time, is coming out in credible ways. And for the first time in history, we have said, yes, these things are true. Why has it been so... why is it so remarkable that today we know that the government is verifying these things when they have denied them since the 1930s? Why now? What's happening?
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Beck, first of all, thank you for having me once again on your
Sure.
program. I really appreciate it. I think it's first important for me to share with you and your audience that I'm no longer employed with the U.S. government for the last
Right.
year and a half, 2 years. So I really can't speak on behalf of the government why they chose this timing now versus any other time. But what I speculate is that we are now at a point where we have the technological capabilities to not only look at something, but assess what it is we're looking at. And it's to the point where we can look at electro-optical data like gun camera footage, and then we can, of course, cross-reference that with radar data and, of course, the eyewitness accounts as well. And what it does is paint a very compelling picture that we're dealing with technology that is beyond next generation. We're dealing with a capability that can outperform anything we have, at least conventionally speaking, in our inventory. And from that perspective, one has to presume that there may be a national security threat, whether it is an adversary, a foreign adversary that has leapfrogged us in technology, or it's something completely different. I think.
So let me stop here, and I'd like to ask both of you here. When you just said next generation technology, this doesn't seem like the next generation. This seems like several generations past us. Is that accurate? I'd like to hear
Right.
from both of you.
Beyond
Absolutely.
next generation.
Absolutely. This is not incremental. This is not the next generation. This is fundamentally different.
Right.
Right. And
This is beyond next generation.
if a nation had this kind of technology, they would be so far ahead of us. We would, we'd be like Panama versus the United States. There's just no way to. This technology is stunning, and it would not be just one vehicle. This would have to translate to all kinds of technology that would be stunning. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
That is
and
correct.
I think from a DoD perspective, and Chris can talk to your audience a little bit more about this, but we spend billions with a B, billions of dollars each year to avoid strategic surprise, meaning we want
Right.
to maintain a technological advantage over adversaries. And if there is someone or something that has this type of advancement, and by the way, going back to 2004 and possibly earlier, then all this time and effort and money and resources and manpower that we've put into ensuring we remain a superpower on the global stage, then you have to kind of scratch your head and say, okay, well, maybe we're not. And that's obviously a concern, at least from my perspective. When I was at the Pentagon, I'm not into UFOs. I'm not a ufologist or into all this other stuff. My job was and is now basically your old gumshoe investigator, just the facts, ma'am, kind of guy. So
when you were, if I'm not mistaken, Luis, when you were asked to head this, you were asked, "What do you think about UFOs?" And you thought it was like a trick question. You're like, "I don't know. I don't think of UFOs." Is that right?
Yes, sir. That's true. In
Yeah.
fact, my answer was I don't think about them because I really don't have the time or luxury to. I'm too focused on bad guys and terrorists and spies. But at the end of the day, when you're in that type of environment, especially intelligence, and you realize that you're coming across truly something that is a paradigm shift, exponentially more capable than you are, then that becomes a problem.